Good morning and welcome to the press conference of the film Rocks, a film that competes in the official section of this edition of the San Sebastian Film Festival. And to talk about it, we've got Prentsaurrekoa, the screenplay writer, and Sarah Gavron, who is the director of the film. So if you have any questions, there's one in the second row, and she's going to be speaking in English, so relax.
So my question is, why do you choose London in particular?
Why choose to set the film in London?
Yeah.
Well, we're both Londoners. Teresa can speak for herself, but that's okay, I'll hold it. Where you grew up. Explain where you grew up.
Sorry, who asked the question?
This lady here.
Hi. I'm from Hackney. I'm from Hackney, London, East London, where the film is set, and I wanted to set the film in my local area because it's really a dedication to the women that I know and love.
Yeah, and London is this, as you see in the film, it's this mixture of ethnicities, and we felt like you often don't see those women on screen, and we wanted to bring that world to life in a way that we hadn't seen before.
Sí, tenemos aquí en primera otra.
Hi, congratulations for the film. I liked it very much. I would like to ask you, the mobile phones and social media, we don't see it too much in the films. You see mobiles at the beginning and at the end, and a little bit through the film, and social media with Instagram also appears. Was there further development upon those issues of social media in the film, and you decided to edit it out, or was it always the case?
We talked a bit about including social media, and I think there was a version of the film that had quite a strong social media element, but we talked as well about trying to make a film that felt timeless. And actually, when we spent a lot of the time with the young women in developing the film, it felt a lot like a film about their friendship. And social media plays a big part of that, but more than anything, we just wanted to show the heart of that and how that perseveres and how it's something that we can all relate to.
Yeah, and as Teresa said, the social media is moving on so fast. So the minute you feature it, it's dating in terms of what they're looking at. And we wanted very much to keep the focus on the girls themselves and the complexity of their lives, and not make it about any single thing, but about their friendship and them.
¿Más preguntas?
Any further questions? Any further questions? Yes? Same guy again. Oh no, same girl. Here we go.
I was wondering about the ending. Like, do you think, what kind of hopes would you see for this family after the ending of the movie? What do you think would actually happen after that?
It's a good question. You're good on the ending. I'll go first. Well, we talked a lot about how to end the film, and we had various different ways. I think Teresa's always put it really well, that you end with feeling that there is possibility for this young woman. You don't know how she's going to end up. We don't know how she's going to end up. There are women in that situation who have trajectories that aren't good, but they're also, we feel like she's resilient, as lots of those young women are, that she's got the capacity for joy, for love and for friendship, and that may well carry her through. So we wanted to suggest that hope.
Okay. Sí, aquí. Sí.
Over here again. Hi, me again. I would like to ask you about the actresses. How did you find them, and especially the Rocks, the girl that plays Rocks, Bukaki Bakray, I think is her name. How did you select her?
So Teresa and her co-writer Claire were there right from the beginning. We set about doing an unusual thing in this film, in that we found the girls before Teresa and Claire wrote the script. So we built it around the girls that we found. It was a very long process involving a rather fantastic casting director who has worked with Andrea Arnold on American Honey and Fish Tank and various other people. So she's called Lucy Pardee, and she worked with her colleague Jessica Straker, and they went with us sometimes into schools all in the East End of London, over almost a year, I'd say. She was involved, and normally a casting process would take a couple of months, but this was much more extended. And it was a kind of combination of research and casting, because she was spending time in the classrooms, really finding the range of characters, feeding ideas back to the writers and to me. And through that, we assembled a group of about 30 young people. It could have been about any one of them at the beginning. We didn't have a casting brief. We didn't say we want a girl to look like this, to be from this background, to talk like this, like you would normally do in casting. We just said we want interesting girls who want to come on this journey with us, who want to build this film with us. We want to collaborate with them in the creation of it. And then Teresa, very quickly, you talk about Bookie and your connection with who plays ROCKS.
Yeah, I think I met Bookie and sort of immediately knew that she was, she just represented a lot of the things that we wanted the story to feel like. She was strong, and she looked a lot older than she was, and she carried herself with a lot more strength than she needed to. But then she would let us into these moments of pure joy and vulnerability and childlikeness, and it just felt like this is the woman we want to watch this film and feel seen. And who better than to tell the story than this young woman? She felt very magical when I met her, and she reminded me of my sisters as well, so it felt like she was the perfect person.
And they had another connection because they're both British Nigerian.
Yeah, both from, we lived down the road from each other. It just felt a little bit like fate.
It felt like fate. And then around them, it was quite interesting how the rest of the cast evolved, because initially we had a friendship with the best friend of the Bookie's character, ROCKS, and we were thinking of who that could be, and we were thinking of other girls. But then naturally, during our workshop process, where we were improvising and we were chatting to the girls and they were spending many hours with us and with each other, this natural, really intense friendship came about between Kosar Ali, the British Somali girl, and Bookie. And now they are best friends. Bookie says they're like blue tack. You know, they literally stuck together. And we responded to that. So Teresa and Claire wrote that friend character as a British Somali girl, and that story developed because we had Kosar in the room and we were responding to her.
Bien. Sí, María.
Gracias por esta.
Thank you very much for this film, which is so complex and very luminous. What surprised me was the absence of rage in ROCKS, and also the perception of resignation that floats in the air, and that's what's left. There's a generation that accepts that marginalization, social marginalization or exclusion, we could call it. Could you please address those two issues, those decisions that you've made vis-a-vis the film, of the why there doesn't seem to be any social rage, so to speak. There's no political rage either. And that resignation, I see a certain resignation, which I believe interesting, by the way. Anger, I mean, rage, more than rage, I would call it anger, okay?
A few films that address that issue with socially marginalised people, particularly young people, as being angry. I think the media does that well enough. A lot of headlines talk about teenagers as being problematic or violence and gangs, and I think that all speaks to the rage that is a product of being marginalised or excluded from mainstream society. I think what we don't see is that despite all of the justifiable reasons that young people should and could be angry, what we don't see is the perseverance of joy, we don't see their resilience, and we don't see the fact that even though we probably don't give them the best opportunities, that they're able to make quite a lot out of nothing. And I think what we saw when we were workshopping with the young people were all of those things, and we wanted to celebrate that, we wanted to honour that, we wanted to remind people of what young people are, and they are these balls of potential, of magic and of love, and if they are nurtured in the way that they should be, that the potential is limitless. And I think we use the word limitless a lot when we were developing the film. We all felt limitless because we were around them, and we feel now, especially because we're doing a lot of work with them continuing after the film, we feel that their potential, because they have the right structures around them, that that they wouldn't have had potentially, because in London a lot of youth clubs have been removed, a lot of universal services has been removed, but now because of people like Lucy Pardee, who's built connections with drama schools or workshop opportunities, the young people, we hope, will see their full potential. So we kind of wanted to explore that and give them something that they could watch on screen and feel celebrated and feel seen as other than a problem.
Yeah.
And Sarah, do you want to add something to this? Or?
No, I think that sort of says it all. I mean, one of the very striking things when I went into the schools, and Teresa works with young people, so she was more familiar than I was with the everyday lives of these young people, was how much, despite their lives, despite their circumstances and their socioeconomic situations, how much joy they find in the everyday and how much tenacity and sort of drive they have, to be honest. And that was really, really striking, and often in films we don't see that. So we really harnessed what was there, to be honest.
Sí, tenemos primero aquí y luego vamos allá.
Yes, first here and then there.
Hi again. I should have just asked for an interview. I wanted to know about the relationship between the girl and the brother. How do you develop that relationship so it's believable?
Yeah. Well, so Teresa really came up with this storyline, because the origin of the film was that we were working with these young girls, we had a world and we had characters, but we didn't have a storyline, and Teresa then came up with this storyline that was, you know, she developed for a while and thought about and knew from her life experiences, and from that storyline there was this brother in this relationship. So then Lucy Pardee and Jessica Straker went out to cast this little boy, and the minute we saw a number, of course, and the minute he walked into the room, he had this very really vivid imagination. I mean, he practically couldn't break out of his imaginary world, and we knew that he was the one, and the relationship that he developed with ROCKS became a real-life sibling relationship, in that sometimes they loved each other and sometimes they hated each other. And they had this sort of, and he saw her as someone he could go to protect him. And I'm not sure quite I'm answering the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was it evolved as this very natural sibling relationship. And sometimes he was delightful and sometimes he'd be a bit difficult and she'd have to chastise him. And I've said this before, but one time I heard her in the headphones saying, "Come on, let's just do it. Who do you think you are, Denzel Bloody Washington?"
Sí, tenemos ahí.
Hola. Hi, congratulations, and thank you very much for making this film. Within the harshness of the issue, you leave this solidarity message and of hope at the end. And excuse me, but of those films that make me love film because of what you convey and how you do things, congratulations. My question would be, could you please go further in depth as regards the why of that character, of the young girl that ROCKS has stolen the money from, and then she disappears. What did you want to convey exactly with that character? And thank you very much, and congratulations once again for the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we wanted to show a friendship group that obviously they were quite strong together, but I think it was important as well to show the character ROCKS as not being a saint, of being complex and capable of making, you know, unfortunate decisions. We also wanted to sort of play with the idea that a lot of kids get left behind, a lot of kids get forgotten. We wanted to keep the point of view really with ROCKS and her main friends. So when Shania disappears, it's not uncommon in a lot of schools for kids to be kicked out, particularly with the rising of academies in London. We have a lot of kids being managed out of mainstream education. So Shania unfortunately fell victim to that. I think what we hoped to achieve is see a softness in Shania, maybe see a reason as to why her character was more complicated, and see that actually all the school saw of her was a girl who was often late, who was causing fights in the playground, and who was slightly difficult to control. And there was conversations between her and Rox that alluded to the fact that she has been seen as a problematic student her whole academic career. So this is pretty much a pattern for her, and how she's removed from the school without much of a chance to develop any further. So as well, whereas we have Rox, who has the stability of her friendships, which really saves her, we have someone like Shania who gets lost in the system because she doesn't necessarily have the structures that should be in place for her already, but aren't necessarily. So that's what we really hoped to convey with the Shania character.
Yeah, and just to add to that, from a political point of view, I mean, Teresa was much more familiar with that system of excluding children, but I was really shocked by how many children, for really quite minor offences, are thrown out of school and then really lost through the cracks of the system. Yeah.
¿Más preguntas?
Further questions? Yes. First of all, congratulations for the film, because the truth is it's very luminous, and despite the difficulties with which the protagonist goes through, it's very positive. And I would like to ask you, how have you managed to convey that positive spirit despite all of the difficulties the main character goes through?
I think a lot of that comes from the girls. I hope the success of this film comes from the process of it. We always talk about, as a group, that what you see on screen is an outpouring of love by probably 100 women that were involved in the film, from their teachers who were supportive to their after-school teachers who made space for us to develop and to do workshops, who contributed their time and resources, their mothers who came down, their big sisters who sat in the backs of workshops, them and their friends. So I think really what the reason why I think Joy perseveres in the film is because Joy perseveres in life, and because we had enough time to spend with them to really capture that, and rather than impose a story of an outsider looking in and saying, you know, kids have bad lives, so therefore they must be bad and have bad experiences, we were really able to capture what was there, as Sarah says, and it was really magical to be around them. You can't be anywhere near them and not laugh. They are the loudest people in the world, the most joyful people in the world, and it would be impossible to write anything surrounding them where that didn't bounce off the screen. So we're really glad that you saw that, because that is who they are, and I think they're reflective of a lot of young people in London, and we hope more people think of youngsters in that way.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. In terms of the sort of way on set, from a practical point of view, that we tried to allow them to feel as free as possible, so that if they found something funny, we could capture it, rather than make often a film set feels very restrictive and you become quite stiff if you're a first-time actor particularly. We ran 2 and sometimes 3 cameras. We didn't say action, so we tried to make it, we had a team behind the camera, from the writers to the producers to the camera team, who were predominantly female and predominantly young, and also a mix of ethnicity, so it felt like when these girls looked behind the camera, it wasn't an intimidating experience, that they weren't surrounded by a world they didn't know. And they had got to know a lot of the team over the year preparation. So I think they felt they were able to be themselves, which was really the intention.
Any further questions? Yes, over there. I would like for you to tell us how you see these types of films, that the ideal thing would be for the adolescents themselves to watch the film, right, if you get what I'm saying, so they can see quite often films, Marvel films or whatever, you know what I'm saying, which are much simpler vis-a-vis plot. But your concern or the project of managing that this type of film or cinema, which is luminous, but it's also complex, a little complex, can be consumed by the teenagers themselves, and that are a little bit excluded or marginalised. Yes, of course it concerns you, but how are you going to try to do so that your film can make it to the right audience, if you get what I'm saying, which are they themselves, if you get what I'm saying?
we very much wanted to reach that young audience. And we had some test screenings with young people, and what was sort of great for me was seeing how they were occasionally responding or laughing or making a kind of expression of recognition at moments that I didn't even know were there. So I felt like they had kind of made this film and found themselves in it, and we want them to find it, don't we? So we'll really work with the distributors and the cinema world, and it's fantastic being at festivals and getting the word out to try and find that audience.
And I also think if you build it, they'll come. I think there's a lot of, I think we've believed a lot of false narratives around the reasons why we don't see certain people on screen, and as to say that we don't see them on screen because they don't come to the cinema or they don't watch TV, and that's false. And I think films like Black Panther has proven that. I'm glad that you brought up Marvel, because I've been a die-hard Marvel fan my whole life, and I sat in Black Panther and I cried, not because, spoiler alert, Killmonger died or anything, but just because I was like, oh my gosh, like I've loved these people my whole life, and this is the first time I feel like they've loved me back. And to realize that was really overwhelming for me. And I think my personal mission, I always say, is to make things that love people back. And people are looking to be loved back. So they will go to the cinema because they'll see themselves on posters, they'll see themselves in trailers, and they will text each other because people have been waiting to see themselves and their aunts and their mums.
Sí, tenemos una...
Yep. A question right at the back, it seems. Congratulations for the film. I would like to ask you, what surprised me, as it's a world of teenagers at the present day, new technologies appear, but they're not constantly there. The girls look at their faces, and their behavior is like we had 20 years ago when we were kids in Europe. So I'd like to ask you whether in all of those workshops, in everything that you've been developing and researching, was that the case, or were they really most of the time looking at mobiles and looking at their tablets or whatever, and in their own lives, or did they really look at each other and talk to each other? And you catch what I'm saying?
Look at each other and talk to each other, didn't they? I mean, there's definitely a lot of mobile phone interaction, but, you know, they do also interact a lot. And at school, phones are banned, you know, unless you sneak them under your table. So they're forced to talk to each other. Yeah.
Sí. ¿Más preguntas?
Any further questions? We've got some time. Yes? One more? Or, sorry, I'm going to ask again. A curiosity, because in a teenager world, as the protagonist in the film, quite clearly the vision is clearly of women, the point of view of women, and we can see this quite clearly. There's no relationship with boy students, if you catch what I'm saying, in the film. It's all the world of the group of girlfriends. So what was the idea behind that? Because it's quite strange at that age.
Surprisingly, boys don't matter that much at that age. I mean, I don't know how much they matter at any age, but surprisingly, they didn't matter. There was a version of the script that featured boys a lot more, and we realized that we were forcing it into their worlds, and a lot of those young women don't fill their worlds with boys, or even conversations about boys. They talk about boys in a way like they talk about Chris Brown and Drake, really fantasy, far removed. But as for the boys next door, they didn't really feature in a lot of their worlds. So it felt a bit like doing it a disservice to force them in. What was really important to them was their friendship. So that became the star of the film when we actually went back to give it another go.
And I think talking to them, what was clear was that female friendship is your first love.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they move on later to boys. And they were only sort of 14, 15. So I'm sure in the next few years, you know, it will change, but it's that magic moment where that interaction is so intense, and we often don't focus on it in films because we have boys and the focus shifts to the, you know, how a girl is in relation to boys. And also we have in England a lot of girls' schools, and also because of their cultural backgrounds, quite a lot of them, their parents choose to send them to girls' schools, and so you find those girls in these girls' schools, and they form those very, very strong bonds that last often for life, but at that age are particularly intense.
Tendríamos tiempo para una pregunta más.
Time for another question, if anyone wants to ask a question, that is. No? Yes, we have another one back there.
I wonder if you gave thought to giving more background on the appearance of these kids and what led the mother in particular to make the decision she made. I mean, it's very much from the girl's point of view, but did you think of filling in more about the background of the mother?
Yeah.
We developed a lot of that, Claire and I, when we were writing it. We went back and forth about what to include. We spoke a lot about where we wanted the focus to be and whether we wanted the focus to be on the mum or on ROCKS. I think what we decided was to sort of make her as ambiguous and as universal as possible. We have a tendency, I think, sometimes to other people, to say, oh, that is so specific to that situation that I can't relate, or it couldn't happen to me, or that's why this is happening. I think what we were trying to do was create a circumstance where people say, oh, I get it, I understand sometimes the pressure of this or the pressure of that, or I know that if something that people could form their own narrative that felt relatable to them and helped make the story feel maybe a little bit more universal.
Yeah, as Teresa says, as I'm sure you know, when you develop a film, you go down many avenues and you pull back. And yes, and Claire and Teresa and as a team, we all discussed the backstories and what had happened, but felt that it was better to, as Teresa says, to keep it the lighter touch and to just touch upon it, and also to then tell the journey of ROCKS beyond that, so that it was really her story.
¿Alguna pregunta más?
Any further questions? Okay, perhaps to finish, I would like could you talk a bit how you decided the visual side, because I think the texture is almost documentary, albeit it's fiction. We know it's fiction, but I like the quality it has a documentary. The work with the DOP, for example, who's a great director of photography, for example. Okay. Helene Louvart. Oh,
really, worked on so many films. I think on her IMDb there are 50 feature films, which is rather intimidating. She also has 5 children, so I don't know how she does it. But she immediately responded to the script that Teresa and Claire had written in this very interesting way. I decided on this project. I've worked in the past with some wonderful male DOPs, but because of the nature of the project and because we need to redress the balance of crews, and because I like working with women as well, I decided to just meet women DOPs, and it was really an eye-opener for me in terms of that collaboration, because I met some wonderful women who I'd never met before. And Helene came forward and she responded so emotionally rather than visually. She responded, she talked about the emotion of each scene, and that felt right for this. And we all decided early on that we would have 2 cameras, which some DOPs don't like because it compromises the lighting and, the position of the camera, but it was all about allowing the girls as much freedom as possible within the mise en scène. And we also decided together, and Helene was particularly influential in this, to shoot in entirely real locations, that we didn't have any set builds, so that in the girls' own patch, so that they felt they were at home in the environments we were filming in. We did, have to behave like a documentary crew, and I have made documentaries, and there were moments where it was very similar to that. But we went handheld, but we also did do some more sort of set-up stuff. We shot on the Amira, so it was very flexible. We had a great second camera operator called Rachel Clark, and entirely female camera teams. And that was the way it worked, yeah.
Okay. Well, we have to finish here. I would just like to thank you both, Teresa and Sarah, for being here today with us and with your film, and wish you the best of luck with the film ROCKS. Thank you.